Over 1 billion people are trapped in a cycle they can't escape. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack willpower, but because their own brain is working against them. For the first time in human history, we might have actually found a way out. Imagine waking up tomorrow and not being hungry, not starving yourself, not white-knuckling through cravings, just quiet, no food noise, no constant mental battle. For most, that sounds impossible. But for millions right now, that's exactly what's happening. Because of a tiny weekly injection that is genuinely reshaping how humanity thinks about obesity, addiction, and medicine. This is not hype. This is biology, and it's bigger than most people realize. Here's something that doesn't get said enough. Obesity is not a character flaw. More than 1 billion people worldwide are classified as obese. Numbers keep climbing every year. By the middle of this century, nearly 1 in 3 adults on Earth could be obese, and it's killing people. Close to 4 million deaths every year, directly linked to excess body weight. Getting obese is not about eating too much at a party once. It's not about a few bad weekends. If someone eats just slightly more than their body needs each day, that alone can add close to 5 kilograms of fat in a single year. Silently, gradually, without ever feeling like they're doing anything wrong. And the food environment we live in today? It was practically engineered to make that happen. Ultra-processed foods are designed in labs to maximize how much you want to keep eating. They hit your brain's reward system with the perfect combination of sugar, fat, and salt. Your brain evolved to love those things because for most of human history, those were survival signals. Calorie-dense food meant you'd live another day. But now that same biological programming is being exploited by a food industry worth trillions of dollars. And your brain genuinely cannot tell the difference. Most people don't overeat because they're weak. They overeat because they're human. So if we know the problem, why can't people just fix it? Well, they try. Constantly. The global diet industry is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Millions go on and off diets every year. And the results? Honestly, pretty discouraging. Most people gain most of it back within a year or two. Sometimes more than they lost in the first place. And here's the brutal part. This isn't mostly their fault. When you lose weight, your body actually fights back. It lowers your metabolic rate. It increases hunger hormones. It tells your brain to seek food more urgently. Your biology is essentially trying to drag you back to the weight it considers normal, even if that weight is damaging your health. And hunger? That's not just a feeling. That's a hormonal signal your body fires at you, sometimes relentlessly. How intensely you experience it is largely determined by your genetics. Some people are simply born with louder hunger signals. They think about food constantly. It's not weakness, it's wiring. For decades, the only real solutions were extreme lifestyle overhaul, incredibly difficult to sustain, or bariatric surgery, highly effective but invasive, permanent, and not accessible to most people. That was it. Until recently. Here's where the biology gets genuinely fascinating. Your body has a hormone called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. You've probably never heard of it, but it's been quietly running in the background of your metabolism. Every time you eat a meal, your gut releases GLP-1 into your bloodstream. It tells your pancreas to release insulin, slows down digestion so your stomach empties more gradually, and most importantly, sends a signal to your brain that says, "Okay, we're good. We can stop now." The problem? It disappears from your bloodstream in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Barely enough time to finish a sentence. So scientists had a question. What if we could make that signal last longer? What if instead of a quick whisper, we could keep that "I'm full, I'm satisfied" message running for hours, for days? That's exactly what modern GLP-1 drugs do. The latest versions, Semaglutide and Tirzepatide, sold under names like Ozempic and Mounjaro, are engineered to stay active in your body for up to a full week. They send a continuous low-level signal that dials down appetite, reduces food noise, and helps regulate blood sugar. People who use these drugs describe the experience as almost surreal at first. The constant mental chatter about food just stops. They eat a reasonable amount, feel genuinely satisfied, and move on with their day. For someone who has spent decades fighting their own hunger signals, that feels revolutionary, and the clinical results back that feeling up completely. In the first 3 months, people typically lose around 10% of their body weight. By 6 months, that climbs past 15%. After a full year, weight loss of 20% or more is not uncommon. To put that in perspective, that level of weight loss was previously only reliably achievable through surgery. But the benefits go far beyond a number on the scale. People on semaglutide showed a meaningful reduction in their risk of stroke and heart attack. Tirzepatide trials showed it slashed the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by more than half. These aren't small effects. They're the kind of numbers that make cardiologists and endocrinologists sit up straight. Early research suggests these drugs may also reduce sleep apnea severity, improve kidney and liver health, lower chronic inflammation, reduce certain cancer risks, and there's even emerging interest in their potential role in slowing cognitive decline. And then there's something that caught researchers completely off guard. People using these drugs started reporting dramatically reduced cravings, not just for food, but for alcohol, nicotine, and other addictive substances. Multiple large-scale trials are currently underway to investigate this effect. If the results hold up, GLP-1 drugs could become the first genuinely effective anti-addiction treatment. The implications of that alone are staggering. Okay, but nothing this significant comes without some real talk about the downsides. The most common side effects are gastrointestinal: nausea, vomiting, constipation, diarrhea. Not pleasant, but for most users they're temporary and manageable, especially when doses are increased gradually. More serious complications, things like pancreatitis or gallbladder issues, do occur, but they affect a small minority of users. These drugs should never be used without proper medical guidance. That point is not negotiable. Since millions of people have only recently started using them, we are still in the relatively early stages of understanding long-term effects. Continued monitoring and research is critical. There's also a more subtle issue that deserves more attention. Rapid weight loss, regardless of how it's achieved, burns muscle alongside fat if you're not careful. That's genuinely harmful, especially for people over 40. To get the real benefit, users need to maintain adequate protein intake and do resistance training. The drug changes your biology, but it doesn't replace the work of building a healthier lifestyle. And finally, these drugs don't solve the underlying environment that caused obesity in the first place. Stop taking them without changing your habits, and the weight very often comes back. For some people, long-term or permanent use may be the reality. The honest framing is this: the drug quiets the noise so you can finally make the changes you couldn't make before. But you still have to make them. Here's what this all means at scale, and it's hard to overstate. Modeling studies have looked at what would happen if GLP-1 drugs were widely accessible to people living with obesity. The projections are remarkable. Tens of millions of cases of diabetes prevented, millions of cases of heart disease avoided, and millions of premature deaths that simply don't happen. That's not a pharmaceutical ad. That's math applied to a disease. Right now, the biggest barriers aren't scientific, they're logistical. Supply shortages, patent protections keeping prices high. But those patents are expiring. Generic versions are coming in multiple markets, prices are expected to fall significantly, and production is scaling up. The future of obesity medicine is changing faster than almost any other field in healthcare. While we still need systemic changes in how food is produced, marketed, and regulated. For the first time in history, there is a medical tool that can meaningfully help people who are already caught in the trap. So where does this leave us? We are living through what may genuinely be remembered as a turning point in the history of medicine. Not because a drug does all the work for you, it doesn't, but because for the first time, people who have been fighting their own biology finally have something working with them instead of against them. Obesity has been one of the most underfunded, misunderstood, and stigmatized chronic diseases. The fact that science may have found a real answer, a biological answer, not a willpower lecture, matters deeply. The question now isn't whether this revolution is happening. It already is. The question is, who gets access to it? How soon? And what do we do with the time it buys us? And that question, about access, inequality, and what happens when life-changing medicine only reaches some people, is one worth thinking hard about. Because the science moving fast doesn't automatically mean the world gets better for everyone. What do you think? Does a drug like this change how we should think about obesity, willpower, and personal responsibility? Drop your take in the comments. Genuinely curious where people land on this one.